Hi everybody and welcome. I'm going to give you some tuning notes to check your guitar to if you want to play along on some of these slowed down examples. So first of all, your E, D, check those again in case you're playing with a floating bridge. The whole thing will move if you're way out. So if you're way out, just kind of get it close and then refine it. D. Check it against an open G chord. I asked for inquiries about what I should talk about. In response to some of those, I'm going to go over a little bit of my equipment stuff. This is basically the rig I use on stage. This is my main axe, Ernie Ball Music Man. Steve Morse model, oddly enough. Let's see, there's 4 pickups on it, 2 humbuckers, 2 single coils for getting warm sound, more mid-rangey, single coil, and combination. These switches are just for changing pickups. In the preference, it seems logical to me. I plug directly into a AB box for the tuner, so I can tune without making any noise. It's good during a drum fill or something. I can switch off the guitar and look down here, and I have a little tuner that lights up in the dark too. That's important to have. There's also a booster, a TC booster / distortion, which I use from time to time, actually very occasionally, because it loads up the front end of the sound quite a bit. But like on the intro of Too Many Notes, before the band comes in, I'll use it because it adds some bass to the sound. Okay, the pedals are all over the place. In order, I'll explain what each one does. First one is long delay. The long delay is always being fed by the guitar and is always coming out of the delay. It's just being stopped by the volume pedal before the guitar goes into the amp. I have 2 amps. Main amp, it's this what we call the dry sound, and then the second amp, which is the effects return, or the wet sound. The dry amp is always on. That's the one I'm always playing through. And basically that never goes away unless I turn the volume off, in which case there's no volume for any of the effects. So the dry amp's always on, and the delays return to a second amp called the wet amp or effects amp or whatever. So you have the dry all the time, and when I add the delay or push down on the delay pedal, I get the wet sound added to it. That doesn't change the dry sound at all when I add it. It just adds to it. And that's handy for things like this. The next pedal is kind of a short delay. In fact, it's so short that you probably can't hear the amount of delay. Somewhere on the order of 15, 16 milliseconds. Just enough to allow me to give a little modulation to it. You can probably hear the modulation if I play some harmonics that stay on pitch. I'm adding it in. You can hear it modulate or beat a little bit. Here's without. Here's with it. It's like that. Like a fish swimming in the water. Anyway, that gives some air to the sound, and it's kind of a real subtle chorus. So when you're playing clean things, like here's without it. Here's with it. Put the two together, the short delay and the long delay, and you get what kind of a nice airy sound. Good for harmonics and things. Anytime you want something to ring, you generally want some kind of delay or reverb associated with it. Again, none of these pedals are guitar volume. They're just effects volume. Next on the list is the synthesizer pedal. It's just a volume control that's in stereo. There's two volume pots gang together. The two volume pots work together. They're in parallel. So you can put two things in or flip a switch and have a pan pedal. I use it as basically a stereo volume pedal. It acts just like a regular volume pedal, only 2 ins and 2 outs. So my synth, which is basically like playing a keyboard, so I can fade it in when I'm playing guitar. Almost always I use it underneath the guitar. That is, the guitar is always playing. And then I add the synth. Something like that. One other switch I've got here is a preamp gain for the main amplifier head. When I press it, it doesn't change the tone, it just adds a little bit more voltage. I'm going to change from a smooth sound to a distorted sound, changing the volume of the guitar, the pickups, and the amount of delay that I'm using. Basically, there's no tone change on the amp whatsoever, other than the amount of gain that I'm giving it. At the end, I was using the long delay when I played single note stuff up high and a warmer pickup to give more of a vocal or singing sound. Then I got two other pedals for doing a kind of a sound-on-sound thing. One gives me a electronic gate signal. I think it's about 5 volts. And it's such high voltage that it makes an audible click through the amplifier. I took advantage of that by plugging it into a volume pedal so I can bring it in and bring it out when I want. And on this delay, the Lexicon delay, you can chop up the loop into 8 segments, 64, 32, whatever you want to do. And what it basically gives you is tempo. So with that tempo, now that'll keep going, so I can play. Next, I'd like to talk about and demonstrate what I go through when I'm working on a section and I find that there's a roadblock or some kind of problem. In other words, what do you practice? If you got a lick that's really hard to do, the common approach seems to be to play the lick 1,000,000 times. And that kind of wins the war with overkill, because if you play the lick 1,000,000 times, you will have played the hard part of the lick 1,000,000 times, and that's really what you needed to practice. So I'm going to show you how I go about trying to streamline that process. In other words, like anything else, find the problem and treat it. You don't worry about the parts that you can do already or the parts that you can do okay. Just go straight to the problem. some of the licks I normally practice that are hard to do on the spot, you know, where you're playing one thing and then suddenly have to jump into a lick. In Twigs Approved, one of the hard licks is. The uncomfortable section I just uncovered was when I'm going down, picking down on the D string and up on the A string. And it's after I played it a few times and played it slowly from the beginning to made sure where my pick action was ending up. I noticed that down on the D and up on the A is pretty hard to do because you're going down, up, instead of up, down, which is more natural. So now I've kind of isolated the problem, which is crossing strings when your pick is in the wrong direction. You know, imagine these are the strings. If you're picking down here and your next note is up here, it's much harder to change direction and get up here and pull it. But if you use alternate pickings, you run across those kind of situations sometimes. And I do use alternate picking almost exclusively. So what I'm going to try to do is come up with, I'm just going to practice the part that is the problem, which is crossing strings in the worst case, which is down and then opposite direction to pick up. This is the problem area, is going down on the D, up on the F. So I'm just going to keep doing this. Just make a little exercise out of it so I don't get bored. And if you get bored, you get violent. And if you get violent, you get into the problems. And then you're on TV for the wrong reason, you know. So. Okay, so now we're going to do exercises having to do with this problem, which I think is, you know, pretty common, is how hard it is to pick in opposite directions across strings. And once again, to remind you, if you work on the hardest things, then the easier things will be easy. It's just that simple, at least in my mind. So once again, I'm going to pick down, on this exercise, I'm going to pick down on the E string, the first string, up on the G string. The easier way to do it would be pick up on the E and down on G, because your pick action brings you to the next string. To make it a challenge, we're going to add some more complex left-hand fingerings too, and kind of give you something to think about while you practice the technique. Okay, slowly I'm going to play through the exercise. Even slower, and we're going to talk through it. Down on the E, up on the G. Same thing again, only we're going to change notes so we don't get bored. You notice the bottom note's going up, the top note's going down. That's the opposing motion I was talking about. Then finish it off with a resolution to C sharp and A. So it's real common classical type of harmony. Anyway, once you get to A, make it a C sharp to F sharp. Then move positions to a C sharp and G from the beginning. What we have here is a tritone. And tritones beg to be resolved. I know I'm mixing theory in with all this other stuff, but so that brings us to our new key of D. So we went from E major to D, and we'll just keep doing that in a cycle. D, G, G7th, C, F, F7th, B flat, E flat, E flat 7th, A flat. Just a way to end that. It's not a piece of music, but it incorporates ideas that you could use to make pieces of music. And that's always, to me, a more fun way to exercise a problem or work on a problem is to me, it's interesting to come up with a musical sounding exercise so you don't get so bored. First, before I even explain it, let me say that there is no right way or wrong way, and you should find a way that's right for you. And it's a cliche, I know. But now I haven't said that, let me go on and show you the way that I do it. I hold the pick with 2 fingers and a thumb, and I kind of rotate my wrist as well as use my arm. And it's way different than average. And it does have some limitations. The first one is probably speed, because I believe that rotating everything in one plane, like the traditional picking method, in other words, will probably give you the most possible speed. But one of the advantages it offers to me is that it puts the edge of my hand down near the strings. And when I extend my pinky finger, I have a way to block all the strings that I'm not playing and to mute the strings that I am playing. And of course, it is possible to use the palm of your hand when you pick in the traditional method too. I just find this way easier, and it seems to give me a little bit more mobility. The reason I know is I've tried quite a bit picking in the traditional manner, and I could definitely pick faster, easier, but I couldn't pick real complex jumps. And I couldn't control the strings at high volume as well as I'd like to. So I went back to for me, the way I normally play. Let me demonstrate some of the picking across string, the big. Things like that are just really hard to do with the traditional picking method, and for me are easier with jumping around like this. All I'm doing is just jumping back and forth between that pedal note, as you would call it. And just kind of demonstrate that it is pretty easy to jump out and kind of strike a note with an anchored hand. Now, it works really well for muting the string. So I'm going to turn up the guitar here and get some distortion out of it. and demonstrate the muting and how you can get parts to really come through, even though you're unbelievably loud. One of the ways I use the muted technique is to kind of calm down the lower notes when I'm playing with a lot of distortion. And, well, I don't know, just for a different feel. Like, a lot of times I'll do a fast line muted. There I'm muting almost everything on the low 3 strings and playing everything else straight. With distortion, it's even more obvious. Now I'm going to give an example of, well, without a band, playing along and using the muted fast notes to directly contrast, longer sustained notes. Important point was the muting on the low strings is especially necessary to me because it keeps the notes from running together, and especially if you're doing a complex pattern where you're jumping from one note to another and back. In fact, the lick I just played might be a good exercise here. Kind of a modified blues scale, modified major, minor. It has all the elements of I don't know what, but here it is. It's one pattern played twice. So it's almost like 4 notes of a pentatonic. But we're going to add 2 passing notes, a minor third. So we got A, C natural, C sharp. Bring your first finger up to the 7th fret for the E. Now here's another passing note, is the F natural. Then F sharp. Now stay in this position, and we'll repeat the lick again on the D string. A, C natural, same string on the D string, C sharp. And then switch positions one more time to the 9th position for the E, F, F sharp. We'll end on A. That same scale, using the minor and the major in almost any situation, works real well. Because minor to major third is kind of what's a common thing we're used to hearing? Especially with 7th. So Mixolydian scale or a modified blues scale, whatever you want to call it, the basic element that's chromatic is the fact that there's there's a minor third and a major third, so there's 2 thirds. So here's an example of just another lick. Play A, C, C, E, F, E, A. And that's similar to the lick I did in a song. Same notes. Minor, major, third, and add a 6, or flat 6, between the 5th. Now I'm adding one more chromatic note, and that's the flat 5th between. Now we've got almost a chromatic scale for a good percentage of. As far as working the passing tones in, one way you can try doing it is putting the passing tones, that is a minor, if you're in the major key of that as a minor 3rd, a flat 5th, or a flat 6. You can try putting those in on the weak parts of the beat. Play the tones you know will fit on the downbeat, and the passing tones in between. Exercise, and it's also the introduction of a tune from my new MCA album, or latest MCA album, and the name of the Southern Steel album. The name of the tune is called Sleaze Factor. The very introduction is just a really fast jumble of notes, or an interesting lick, depending on how you look at it. So let's go over it. Start in 7th position, that is first finger on the 7th fret. Play it's almost a D arpeggio. D on the 5th string, play E and F sharp, and an A on the 4th string. Next comes a 5th with the G on the 5th string, C on the 6th string. Next sequence of notes is A on the 4th string, B, C, with an F on the 5th string. And continue that same pattern going to the 3rd string, D, E, F, and then a B flat on the 4th string. Now the pattern changes a little bit. So we play G, A on the 2nd string. Then I usually bridge my finger to play the B on the E string, or B on the 1st string, and a D on the 3rd string. The last two notes are an A and a bent G on the 2nd string. For getting up and down the neck, you always have to change positions, and I want to go over some of the ideas that I think about when I change positions, and at least the way that I look at it. In the example on Pride of the Farm, there's a lot of position change. It goes all over the place. So here's some of the things I'm doing in order to make it at least possible to shift positions. Starting with the lick. It's basically pentatonic with flat 5. Okay, I'm ending on my 1st finger. I'm going to shift positions by going to another string with a different finger. That's an important way to do it. If you arrange your fingering so that you have to take the same finger from one note and put it to the other note to continue the lick, you're going to have a really hard time changing positions. So always go from one finger to another finger to change positions. And it's always best to, if you're going down the neck, to end a lick on your 1st finger and start it the next lick with your 4th or 3rd. That way you're going like this and leapfrogging down. You end on your index finger crossover with your fourth or third. It's just like playing leapfrog with your fingers. So let's go over it slow. Third finger. Fourth finger. Okay, now that theory holds up until we get down. I have no choice on this lick. I just have to end on my second finger. I want to move up a position or two, so I stretch. I'm ending with the second finger. I go to my third. I would go to the fourth, except that the third sets me up better because I have an adjacent note. Now I'm ending this D7th with a C and going to an open B. That's the best possible thing you can have, is an open string, because that gives you the length of the entire note to change position. Another open string. So. One of the reasons I fingered this lick this way was to have the possibility of notes running together by playing scale notes on adjacent string. In every position, there's a possibility of three notes kind of ringing together a little bit. in analyzing Simple Simon, I was using plucked notes for the melody that was basically played with chords. I'm going to play it by itself. So I'm playing, the thumb is not always playing, it's not. The thumb is doing a different rhythm than the other strings to give it a little bit of counterpoint motion. And you notice this is the same exact amp setting as. Basically, the lick consists of an open B, an open E, and an A. Then to a D, A over an A. To a D. Just like a D suspension to a D. Then add a little bass line. Next, one of the points about the guitar and bass riff, the heavy riff, is just basically go to the lead pickup and crank it. And while you're doing that, if you choke up on the pick a little bit, you can, especially on the low strings, really get some different harmonic. And see, also in the tune, there's a kind of a triplet or sextuplet lick that goes by real fast. And I thought we could study that a little bit for a kind of a climbing and ascending riff that crosses positions. I'm going to make it less distorted. Think of it as like a mixolydian with a few variations. That's the only difference is the C natural. Other than that, it's a straight mixolydian. So A mixolydian, which is G, A, B. On next string, C sharp, D, E. Next string, F sharp, G, A. Next string, B, C natural. That's the passing tone. C sharp. So we're good. Now we're going to modulate up to E mixolydian from the A mixolydian, starting on the D string, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D, E. So we've got A mixolydian with only one passing tone. Then E mix. In this case, I've got a lot of distortion on the sound, and I want to get the chord across with as few notes as possible. So I'm going to play the third and the fifth of the chord. It's an E chord. And the bass player is going to play the downbeat, of course, on the E. For the A, I'm just going to play an E and an A together. Same thing. Modulate to D, to G. Kind of a, well, this is just two notes at a time. Fifth, fifth, a sixth. So I'm going C fifth, B flat fifth, to a really, to me, a C played in a sixth. The fifth on the bottom, third on the top. To a F. That's just kind of a blues ending for it. So let me show you what a difference I can make with the distortion on. It'll cut through better than if I go. What I do to accentuate it even farther is I bring in the second amplifier with the volume pedal on these chords so that the walking bass part seems more separated from it. That way it gives it more separation, and it makes it seem more like two different people are playing. And that's, I don't know, that's just one of the things I try to do to help make a part more musical. The chorus is the same way with the two notes. It's just, I'm going to a D chord and then to an A chord, but I'm going to define it with just two notes and add in the synth. I'm kind of trying to imitate the sound of the fiddle. When I recorded, I actually used the fiddle with the guitar part, and using the synthesizer to kind of create a little bit of the sound of another instrument playing with the guitar. At the end of the tune, I follow it with some, again, sextuplets, I guess it would be. Yeah, 6 notes to each. So it goes. So all I'm doing is arpeggiating a D and an A. Slowly, it would be a 4th finger on F sharp. Let me clean up the sound. F sharp, D, A, F sharp. Play them as triplets or 6/2 beat, 3 or 6/2 beat. Then the same thing with an A. E, C sharp, A, E. And this is unusual because it's only fast for just a little split second of time, and then it goes back to a real kind of more relaxed melody. So out of the length, that whole lick, there's only one really little burst of where we're adding, you know, lots of notes. And that makes it easier to digest if you put fast parts, well, surround fast parts with melodic or slow parts, and people, they don't notice that it's fast so much, and they just kind of say, well, hey, that's different, you know, it has variety. Whereas if you do fast parts all the time, then people will say you're playing too many notes. In closing, let me say that you got to practice to get anything done. Obvious stuff. But the probably less obvious is some of the things like, you know, this is my approach to what I do with some of my music, and it's obviously going to be way different than somebody else's approach with what, you know, with how they deal with their music. And it's ideas to give you things to work on yourself. Everybody has to find their own voice, especially when it comes to licks. Licks are great to learn ideas from and to learn the theory from, but like I was explaining with the lick where, you know, we find the problem and then kind of develop a way to fix the problem, you have to use that approach with your playing from beginning to end. Wherever you see there's a problem, zoom in on that, concentrate on it, and expand on different ways to look at the problem and treat the problem and learn. Basically, teaching yourself to learn is what it is all about. It's something I feel pretty strongly about. Everybody has to find a way to teach themselves and, you know, to kind of go on from this. And every lesson you take, every video you watch or whatever, you've got to incorporate it into your own personality and your own way of growing. And lastly, let me say, every time you pick up the guitar, make sure and play something that you really love, so you will look forward to picking it up again.